So, today we're going to be talking about the power of listening to people with lived experience. Why, how, and what to do as a first step. So firstly, we're going to be showing through my story the impact that researchers, so all of you in this audience, the impact that all of you can have on participants. Secondly, we're going to be talking about why incorporating lived experience in research often doesn't actually go right, and how you can make it right practically. And finally, my goal, and my main goal, is to inspire someone in this audience, at least one person, to not view lived experience as just a tick box on your grant application, but as something that is of equal importance to clinical impact. So firstly, we're going to be talking about my story, so the impact that researchers can have on participants. This is me, a decade ago, just over a decade ago. I'm diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and when I was about 14, I started to experience depression. About 16, I started to experience hypomania, and I didn't get the access to the care that I needed. So, like so many people, my mental health declined dramatically, because we're all here because we care about affective disorders, and we're all here because we realise that the research and the clinical practice for affective disorders needs to improve. So I ended up having to attend first episode psychosis services. But when I attended them, they didn't understand my condition. They didn't know what I was going through. They didn't understand what I was experiencing. And this left me feeling misunderstood, hopeless, and suicidal. And for the next couple of years, this led me to not be able to function or do absolutely anything that I was proud of. I was stuck in my room, not being able to do anything. So what's happened since? So I've gone from not being able to concentrate on a single page of text to being the author of a lived experience book that was promoted by the president of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and also having just finished my PhD. From being unable to work to now leading the development of a $500,000 UKRI-based grant for the development of digital technology for mental health. And from being suicidal to, most importantly, raising a new life, my wonderful son. And that's more important than anything else. This was only possible because of researchers. And it's a very odd story. But these two, I mean, you might recognize these people, but you've got Dr. Samir Jaume here and you've got Dr. Demos Dennis-Telekos. And these people transformed my life. The thing is, I couldn't work, so I decided I'm going to be a research participant. Guess what? A lot of research participants, they don't engage in research because they really care about your study. A lot of them don't even know what your study is about, to be frank. Some of us just can't work and we want a little bit of money. So that's what I was. So I decided I'm going to be a research participant at King's. And that's where I met Samir. Now, Samir, the first thing that he did was he made me feel truly that he was grateful for my participation in the research. He listened to what I had to say. And then he really saw me. And he saw my presentation, and there was an obvious case of bipolar disorder, and that the FEP episode that I had when they didn't know what I was going through had been quite obviously a mixed episode. He referred me to the support that I needed finally, and magically, within 2 years, my symptoms mostly dissipated. But the problem was I still couldn't function. Yes, my symptoms were better, but I was still in my room, not contributing to society, and this had a huge downtime in terms of my self-esteem. So what I did was I took part in research in cognitive remediation therapy to aim to improve in these specific areas. And that's where I met Demos. So I engaged in this therapy, it's called cognitive remediation, and basically what it does is it simulates the types of problems that you have in real life, and it helps you to build strategies that actually help you to improve in these areas. And in the previous talk, I think it's very true. A lot of cognitive training doesn't work. And the reason why is because there's no such thing as far transfer. Far transfer is where if you try to improve in one cognitive task, you expect it to transfer to a completely different one. There's no such thing, and I completely agree with that point. So what the cognitive remediation that I was involved in, basically they simulated the exact circumstances that you have in real life, and they help you build in the strategy so that it becomes near transfer, not far transfer. And that's what Demos helped me with. And he really cared about my situation, he really cared about me and wanted to help me improve in this area. And I became better. Now I can function, and now I can finally do the things that I want to do and contribute to society. So overall, Demos and Samir, they treated me like more than a research participant. They cared about my opinion and perspective. They cared about my well-being, and they inspired me to become like them. And my mission became to help people with mental health struggles to not just survive, but to thrive. And that's when I started my BSc in psychology at the University of Sussex. And then wrote my book, which was, enjoyed by several top clinicians in the area, including Sir Professor Robin Murray. And I finally got accepted onto a PhD program. And these are probably familiar faces to you all, but this group accepted me as a researcher, accepted me as a PhD student. And I got to finally study what I wanted, which is cognitive remediation, and I'm trying to help people with mental health struggles to improve in their overall functioning. I was involved in this Lancet Psychiatry piece, in which we tried to also improve access to care for people with first episode mania. And the main thing that was the case with this was I wrote a supplementary piece about my own lived experience. And this was focused on my experience in first episode mania. And this helped inform NICE guidelines in terms of how to better treat it. And since I've been involved in multiple different advocacy type things, including House of Commons events, which is our parliament in the UK, and multiple different public speaking arrangements. I think the main first lesson then, we've got 3 lessons. First thing is, realize the impact that being kind on participants can have on their life. The thing is, all the researchers in this room, but you can have an impact on that person right in front of you. You can transform someone's life, just like Samir or Demos did to me, just by being kind. You'd be surprised a lot of people aren't kind to people. So, as long as you do that, which, the fact you're here for this talk in this artist, I'm sure that you are, because, you're interested in hearing this. But anyway, I wanted to emphasize that point regardless. So part 2, how can you incorporate lived experience in your research process? We're going to be talking about how things often don't go right, and how to make them go right. Sorry for the end on the next slide, very unprofessional. But overall, there's 3 main areas, obviously, of research that we have. We have when we're designing a study, we've got design, delivery, dissemination. And the thing is, with lived experience, you can help with all of the phases, but the most important is design. And I think as mentioned earlier, obviously, you're going for subsequent grant funding, you're thinking about next periods, you're thinking about what you want to do next. So that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to be talking about 2 stories of how it can go wrong, and how it has gone wrong in the past. And we're going to be talking about the common one, the one that happens all the time, and the one that really surprised me. So the common one is that researchers come in, they write a grant application, and then basically 2 weeks before the grant application is due, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, you're the experience expert, have a quick read, and see whether there's anything that you might like to input. And then basically that's it for the design stage in terms of the experience involvement. And I think that this comes from good intention. They're like, okay, we're not going to involve people with experience in the pre-stage because we don't want to overwhelm them with things to do, which is perfectly fair. But the problem is, from a practical level, two things. Firstly, the people that are assessing the grants in the first place, as mentioned before by Philip, a lot of them have lived experience now. Places like Welcome, they've clocked onto this stuff. So that's why we have to clock onto it as well. So also, and most importantly, it's very difficult to influence design and delivery with lived experience once a grant is already accepted. It's very difficult. That's why you're in a great position. You're in a position where you're thinking about the next steps. You're thinking about the next, I can't remember how many years, I think it's 8 years or something like that. You know, a huge amount of time, regardless, like, you know, it's, and that gives good opportunity. But now we're going to be talking about the odd story. So the odd story was that I was so ecstatic. A couple of years ago, I was involved in the most ambitious lived experience grant project. And basically what happened is that they involved about 25 to 30 people with lived experience in focus groups. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. But the problem was, it didn't materialize to a project. Because researchers couldn't understand how to make what people with lived experience wanted from the project. They didn't know how to transform it to something that was research ready. And the reason why is because you're speaking different languages. You know, a person with experience, like, you know, that hasn't been trained in research methods, just like anyone who hasn't been trained in research methods, how would they know the specific how of how to go about the research? So how do you do it? And that's why I designed this framework. So essentially, we've got two parts to it, of how we can incorporate lived experience in the design stage of research. So part one is about the 3 people that you really need on your project. The most important people of all, are the people that are close to lived experience. So what we mean by this is the people who are very much like your participants. And the reason why they matter the most is obvious. They know what your participants is going through. So, you know, it can also be, like we discussed yesterday, that others made the point, it can also be their caregivers or their loved ones. Anyone who has that lived experience is close to it. The one here is advocate. So you ideally have people who are maybe they're really famous for public speaking, or maybe they are like charity leads. These people will help to emphasize your research and make it go further, and will help you with the dissemination phase especially. And also they're a good name overall to have on your grant. But the person that can make it tick and make the whole thing work together is what I describe as a language specialist. So a language specialist is essentially just someone who understands both research methods and also from a lived experience perspective. They understand both of these things. So how do you become one? And this is the second part of the framework. So essentially it's what, why, how, and then once you've done this whole framework, you've done this whole cycle, then you can basically describe this and explain this to the research team. We're going to give an example. So this is the cognitive remediation in bipolar trials, so CRIP2. And the thing is, when we were going to do this study, we asked the question, what do you think of our study? So to give you an idea of like CRIP1, what it was, is that it tested cognitive remediation and the effect that would have on bipolar. And then as the main outcome measure, we had cognition, so things like the street test or TMTB, this type of thing. That was the main outcome measure. And we talked to participants and they said, cognition isn't important. We don't really care about this. Okay, so if it was like the odd case that I said, we could have taken that like directly, like as a piece of information, be like, okay, we're not going to do this, we're going to stop applying for this grant. But we didn't, fortunately, because we asked them why. Why is the powerful question? And why do you not care about it? So they said, why would I care about green written on the screen and then actually green is written in red and I don't really care about this, you know, like the street test. They said that I'm just trying to get to work and survive every day, day by day. That's what I'm trying to do, right? I'm trying to be able to focus on that. So, okay, the how is, okay, cognition may not become the main outcome of interest, maybe functioning is. So then we ask them what again? Okay, so what types of functioning do you care about? And then say, I care about all of them. So why? I don't cook or clean, I can't work, I can't handle my finances, I can barely survive on my own. That's the things that they care about, right? So then, from there, we came up with how. Find scale is the primary outcome measure. We direct that back to the research team. And then, researchers, they know what's the best measure for something, right? So they, if they're fed back, they then saw the FAST, Functional Assessment Short Test, which is a test of overall functioning. It measures 6 different domains of functioning, including like autonomy, employment, social functioning, and so on. And that became our main outcome measure. And who knows, that may have helped us to actually get the grant. And overall, since then, I've done patient and public involvement, but other things that we impacted as well from a lived experience perspective. One thing from CRIB 1, so the original pilot trial, was that there were assessments that were 3 hours long. That's too long. And especially when you're measuring cognition, right? So you're measuring working, verbal memory delayed 2.5 hours into the assessment. How can you expect the results to be reliable as well from a statistical lens or a research lens, right? So this is where actually, people with lived experience can also input upon the, upon the design in ways that can help from a statistical lens as well. And obviously, we've also been involved with charities such as Bipolar UK, and hopefully I'll be able to carry on public speaking so that I can advocate more for this trial. So, the 3 people that we need most for the project, overall then learn lesson 2. Use what, why, how to bring out the incredible potential of people with lived experience and significantly increase the impact of your study. And finally, equal importance to clinical input. So to inspire someone to not view lived experience as simply a tick box, but of equal importance to clinical input. So early in my road, I decided I wanted to make digital tech and to make cognitive remediation more accessible. I wanted to do this, I wanted to contribute to this field. And a major clinician, I'm not going to say who they are or who they're from, they're not from Dresden, by the way, just to clarify. But someone told me, you've not even finished your PhD yet. This is what they said to me a couple of years ago. Let alone being a clinician. What do you think gives you the right to think you can do this? And a clinician told me this to me, and the thing is, the surest way, I'm very grateful to this person, because the shortest way to make sure that I do something is to tell me that I can't. So, I decided to make the platform regardless. And we applied for UKRI funding. I was the main applicant as someone with lived experience. And I won a grant that has got less than 3% acceptance rate. That's why I did. And what we're doing is firstly, we're creating culture-fair cognitive assessments, a tailored intervention that's influenced by this that actually adapts as you go. And finally, an integrated AI coach that can help you in terms of improving in these areas, and it's targeted to young people. Because obviously, young people are the people that we need to impact. Well, ideally, we can catch them young, so that basically we can help people to improve before as they develop. Why did we get accepted? Why did we get chosen? I'm not a clinician. It was because it was relevant to the needs of people with lived experience. But of course, at the same time, practically, I'm not a clinician. So there are a lot of the decisions that need to be made I can't make, right? That's obvious as well. So that is also factual information. And that's why what we did is that we involved clinical and expert input to make sure that what we're doing is actually going to work. So this is cognitive assessments, generally. This is what they're like. This is how they engage. This is how we do cognitive assessments. So we do cognitive assessments in a way that, firstly, we demo how to do it. We don't just give written instructions, we provide demos so that people that are not very good with the English language, for example, they can understand how these tasks work. And we make them culture-fair ways on language exposure. And we've worked with cognitive experts to do so. We make reports that help them to understand these areas of cognitive function, processing speed, selective attention, inhibition, task shifting, as well as many others, and break it down in ways so that people can actually understand what we're talking about. Now, I love science. I obviously was helped by this platform. This platform is a platform for cognitive remediation, which supported me to improve my overall function. And the way that it did it was it simulated circumstances that I would go through and helped me build in the strategies to be able to improve them. But this, like the closer that you get, by the way, for cognitive remediation, the closer that you can get in a simulation to the actual experience you have in real life. Conceptually, and 20 years of research indicates this. Loads of trials and circuits have happened. The closer you can get to the experience, better. And what's the problem with this? When in life are you in a circumstance that you're top-down view of you yourself, and then you can see all of the aisles like this? Like sometimes, maybe with bipolar, I can visualize myself on the screen. Maybe I'll be able to experience this from time to time. But overall, of course, we live life in the first person. That's how we experience the world. So that's what we're doing. And overall, what we're doing is recreating a real world and a gamified environment. So it relates to the previous talk. That's trying to help people to improve in cognition. And the way we do this is by actually simulating the circumstances as closely as possible to the real life experience. One problem with digital therapies is that people, even if they've got statistical clinical backing, that doesn't necessarily mean people are actually going to use it, right? So that's why we involve game science. We've got a developer from The Sims, one, the greatest simulator series of time, working with us to make sure that what we're doing can be as impactful as possible and that people actually want to use it. And we have a sophisticated technological framework as well. So, we've got cognitive assessments, this feeds into results, which feeds into a subsequent tailored intervention, which then, based on how you're performing in this, adapts in itself. So it's an adaptive framework that we've created alongside clinical and cognitive experts. And the requirement of our team is that everyone has experience of mental health difficulties or neurodivergence. This is something that we view as a requirement of our team. Because we want everyone to be able to live from that perspective. So what are we doing next? So right now, we're actually doing an NIHR application alongside Imperial College for subsequent research. So we're applying for our subsequent bids, and fingers crossed to get it. We all know in this audience what grants can be like. It doesn't always work out as planned. But if we don't get it, we'll just keep trying, with different bids. So point 3, lived experience work is a collaborative process. And lived experience can be just as useful as clinical input. Clearly, although, as I said, I can't input on all of these things fully, right? I can't input from a clinical perspective, so I don't know that. I'm a half-decent researcher, I can kind of input from that perspective, but we need a lot better researchers involved, which we certainly have. But lived experience also has a voice, and it's an important one. So, these are the 3 points. So realize the impact that being kind can have on participants. Use the What, Why, How framework to bring out the incredible potential of people with lived experience and increase that impact in the study. And see that lived experience can be just as important as clinical input, as it ensures relevance. And relevance is the key word here, right? You can do the best statistical method in the whole world. What if it's not relevant? That's why you need people with this experience. They can help make it relevant. So none of this would be possible. This is my wonderful wife and my wonderful child. I'd still be in my room, not doing anything. Like I'm doing this. I would be doing nothing if it wasn't for these people. If it wasn't for researchers. Researchers are the reason that I'm here today, that I'm talking to you. And I'm grateful. Especially to Smith and also to Demos. But also, obviously, Alan Young and Professor Sir Robin Murray. These are some of the most epic people in the whole field, and they've been so kind to me. But kindness and belief in me
start off being able to do any of this stuff? It had to start with belief.
So I've got the QR code there in case anyone wants to add me on LinkedIn. But overall, if there's one thing that I want you to take from this talk, is to take inspiration from Samir and Kimon. Give people with the experience a shot.